Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Tourist Railroad Connections, more important than ever. As the pandemic continues to paralyze the world, and most important to everyone here, the tourist railroad industry, more than ever, we need meaningful connections. None of us have the right answers on how to navigate these uncharted waters. No one has ever dreamed of scenarios that we now face. We are all working in the dark, using our gut instincts to make decisions and trying to keep our organizations afloat. Our goal with the webinar is to further the conversations we started over the past few weeks. We encourage you to participate in the conversation. On your screen, you should have a dialog box entitled Go to Webinar Control Panel. In that box should be two selections. If you look at the bottom selection, you should see another white box entitled Type Questions here. Simply type your questions and hit or return to send, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. We also made available recordings of the past webinars. To access them, simply go to www.dynamicticketsolutions.com and click on Webinars link at the top of the navigation. Mark Graybill suggested during our first episode to sharing our year-over-year ticket sales metrics. Dynamic Solutions has agreed to handle the data collection and distribute those that wish to participate. If do so, on the bottom of that same web page, you'll find a form to submit your data. This data will only be shared with railroads that participate. And at this point, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Josh Miller from the North Shore Scenic Railroad.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Duluth, Minnesota. I'm Josh Miller here in Duluth in the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. I'm the station manager for the North Shore Scenic Railroad, which is just right next door to the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. We're one and the same. The railroad museum owns and operates our scenic railroad. The museum, of course, is closed down as being part of a county building in the COVID-19 shutdown. And then, of course, the North Shore Scenic Railroad is not operating excursions up the North Shore of Lake Superior right now, of course, because of the shutdown as well. We're currently shut down until June 1st is our goal startup date right now, and obviously we all know how that date moves. We can talk about stuff like that later. But I'd like to welcome you here. We have a great panelist with us today, and I'm really excited to get to Mark Gray. He's the president of HeritageRail Alliance, and we will talk to him in just a couple minutes here. I'm glad to have him with us. These webinars here are really fun. They are directed towards excursion railroads managers and like the people who run that. And we know that our registration, the people who are on here watching are some very important people in the tourist railroad industry. And I'd like to welcome you all here. We have railroads represented all throughout the country, which is really exciting today. And you get to participate as well through that question box that Mike just mentioned. So you submit those questions and we can see all that and we will get to everybody as best as we can. I like to always give a shout out as best as I can to some of the different railroads that are on here with us. The Coombers and Toltec is on board with us. Welcome back to Travis Stevenson from Boone and Scenic Valley Railroad, the Hobo Railroad. We have the Chehalis and Centralia Railroad Museum up in Washington. Welcome back to them. The Lake Superior and Mississippi Railroad, also in Duluth, Minnesota, just on the other side of town. Welcome to Joel there. Let's see, we got the Whippany Railroad Museum, Western Maryland. See, so we have railroads all here in one place, represented all throughout the country, and you are here and part of it. We'd like to continue that conversation. This is week number 3. As Mike mentioned, we've done a couple more webinars prior to this. We're on week number 3, and in our past couple episodes of this discussion, we've had some really great takeaways. I do encourage you to go back and watch them, but just real quick, I wanted to go over some of the stuff that we covered in our previous episodes, which was, we talked about reassuring guests at our railroads constantly. So we talked about from the very beginning of when they show up and park in your parking lot or find you on their your website, where is that information traveling with them throughout? And you're constantly reassuring them that they are safe. So that is something that we've been talking about, and it's kind of an ongoing conversation. from the waiting area to the boarding doors to the conductor interaction to the walking onto the train to sitting down and riding the train, deboarding and a gift shop experience. You got to start thinking about all of those different things and what kind of information and what you're doing in all of those different locations. We've also talked about how fast we can get our railroads up and running. That's a big question a lot of us have, is we don't have our full staffs usually working at the railroads throughout all of our different locations. And with large events such as the Day Out with Thomas and the Polar Express, what is the future looking like for that? And we'll get a little bit into that today too. Last week was a pretty heavy discussion about Polar Express events and the Day Out with Thomas. Cross promotions on social media. This is a great idea that came from our friends at the Nevada Northern, is that right now, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, the social media locations are really, really valuable places where we're all coming together. In fact, I think GoToWebinar could be argued as a social media of itself. However, places like Facebook are really great places for us to be cross promoting each other right now. As we don't have current campaigns running right now to buy tickets, at least I know for sure here in Duluth, we're not really pushing ticket sales because people aren't necessarily buying things right now. But we are promoting a lot of brand awareness things, right? Keep us in mind, but we can also be promoting other railroads at the same time. And for example, we can show video of the Nevada Northern and share that with people who follow us just to encourage more interest in the railroad world. All right, so back to today's show. We have a little bit more of a loose agenda because we have Mark Gray here from the HeritageRail Alliance. We're excited to talk to him. We're going to talk a little bit about Heritage Rail just in general. We're going to talk about railroad events and operations and how that works at our various excursion railroads. A little bit about rules and regulations, and I'm sure our conversation will stray from this in answer time. So I want to get back to Mark Gray here, but first, just a reminder that question box is there for everybody here watching, so feel free to submit questions, leave comments even. It says questions, but you can say a comment, and we can still also address that. And feel free to participate. Mark, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on board. HeritageRail Alliance, you're the president, and for many years now, I think. Tell us a little bit about your background in HeritageRail Alliance and where you work into that group.
Well, I'm happy to be here. This is a great opportunity, and it's going to be a great hour to share with everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to participate. So as far as myself goes, I've been president since the HeritageRail Alliance was formed, which was through the merger of Train and ARM, and I'll speak more about that in just a moment. But I actually have a regular day job. I manage an engineering department for the Tennessee Valley Authority, and that keeps me pretty busy. And I like to think about all the different hats that I wear. But the one railway preservation, ever since I was a kid, has been something I've wanted to do. I got fascinated with trains as a young kid, much like all of us, and joined the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum when I was 18 years old, as soon as I was eligible for membership, and worked my way up through as a fireman, engineer, road foreman, or supervisor of locomotive engineers. Ended up getting on the board of directors. And so, that's been my passion my entire life. And back in the mid 90s, we had the opportunity to acquire some Niles wheel machines. And once we got those installed and operating, I suggested to our president, like, hey, why don't we share this with everybody? So he said, well, hey, what can we do? And I said, well, there's this group called Train. They have these conferences. Why don't I go to one? We'll set up a display. And that was Cass, West Virginia, November 1999. I remember driving up through there in the snow, and I like hardly knew anybody, but I got to know John Bush, and there were some folks there from the Ohio Central, and got to know a few folks. Then the next year I went to Steamtown, where ARM was having their annual conference in 2000, and so that's how I got involved in Arm and Train. And I've never missed a train conference. I missed a couple of ARM events. But in I think it's about 2006, Molly Butterworth was president of ARM. She had just succeeded Paul Hammond from California State Railroad Museum at the time, and she asked me to get on the board. ARM had been primarily all street railways, electric trolleys and stuff,
Sure.
and they were looking to get into more operating type steam railroads. So she asked me to be a part of it, and so I got on that board. And then like the next year, Train voted me on their board, and there was already talk of doing a lot of things together. 2001, Jim Wren had put together the first combined conference between ARM and Train in Spencer, and it was a great event. It went really well. Jim did a great job, you know, with his all y'all comment. And then 2006, we did it again in California at the California State Railroad Museum. Kathy Taylor put that one on. It drew the largest attendance ever. So that kind of started building momentum, like, you know, maybe we ought to start doing more things together. So the newsletter came next, and we had a meeting at the Strasbourg in spring of, I think it was 2009 or 2010, and it's 2010. And basically brought both boards together, and the late Don Evans came up there as our strategist and took us through a session, and we realized there was far more in common between both organizations than there was different. And that set in motion the opportunity to bring the two groups together, which Bob Opal put together a merger plan, and we carried it out, and we voted in November of 2012 in Montreal to go forth with it. And so January 2013, it became, actually originally it was the Association of Tourist Railroads and Railroad Museums, but that's such a mouthful. We're like, we got to do better than that. So we hired a firm to help us rebrand ourselves, and that came up with the HeritageRail Alliance, and which we announced in Savannah in 2016. And what was funny about that was there's the Heritage Railway Alliance in the UK. Oh. And we were concerned about, would people get us confused? And the president of that organization just happened to be in Savannah for our conference. So I sat down with him prior to making this announcement, said, David, we're about to announce ourselves as the Heritage Rail Alliance. You're the Heritage Railway Alliance in the UK. Do you see a problem with it?
Sure.
And he said, Mark, we did the same thing you did. We were two groups, we joined, we had a real long name, and we went and rebranded ourselves and came up with our name. So I'm good with it, go with it. And so
there you go. So that's kind of the evolution leading up to now. Would you say that there's a HeritageRail Alliance is growing, or is kind of about holding steady as our different railroads kind of unite and are able to communicate more?
Well, you know, between us and the rest of the world, you have Watrain, which is kind of like the umbrella organization. But, you know, I'm proud to say that, you know, we have a lot of United States members. We also represent Canada and Mexico. You've got the museum in Puebla that's a member of the HeritageRail Alliance. We've got a number of members in Canada. So this thing is all of North America, which I think is really, really nice. And the real challenge has been, you know, we do business one way here in the States, they do it different in Canada. So both regulation and the financial lobbying world, it's all different.
Sure.
So oftentimes what we want to do here in the States might not necessarily translate north of the border, which is a challenge, because, you know, we want to do something for everybody, and it doesn't always translate one-to-one every time.
Sure. Well, Mark, let me get into, you know, our topic today is, of course, the COVID-19 shutdown and how that relates into the railroad world. First, I wanted to quick address a question that came from Scott McGee, I think, from, where is he from? The Yosemite Mountain Sugar Pine Railroad. He was just curious how many railroads are on here, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Of course, we can see that there's 55 different attendees here. So we are pretty happy to have lots of different railroads welcome here. And again, I encourage everybody to use that question box to type in questions and comments and things like that. Mark, tell me a little bit about what HeritageRail Alliance has been doing here in the past month or so, as our railroad museums are currently shut down across the country. Many of us going into the busy summer tourist season are facing a challenging summer, to say the least. What has HeritageRail Alliance been able to be doing that we might not know about?
Thank you for the question. And to speak more about HeritageRail, I know most of everyone on here is a tourist railroad, but we also have static museums are part of what we do. And we have it, you know, it doesn't matter what your tax status is, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit. You know, we're all about preservation and preserving our railway heritage. And so there's been a lot of things going on from, we have good working relationships with the American Alliance Museums, which represents practically every type of museum. And, you know, they're headquartered in DC, so they've got a big presence on Capitol Hill. The American Association of State and Local History, which is just up the road here in Nashville for me. And I know their president, John Dichtel, very well. So they're doing things more at the local level. So I'm gonna have to go talk about different segments here. So first, let's talk about advocacy, because advocacy is what we really need a lot of right now. And we can talk about all these bills that Congress has been putting out. So what's that doing for us? And an email I got yesterday from the American Alliance Museums is what did they call it here? It's the next variation of the CARES Act. The words escape me right now, what it's called. Phase 4, economic relief. That's what it was. They want this to undo some of the things that probably may have hurt us in the first CARES Act, which is the limit on the charitable deductions, which I think there was a $300 limit that you could do. Let's see. Let me just read this verbatim, if you don't mind. Expand the universal charitable deduction provision of the CARES Act by removing the $300 cap. Extend the CARES Act removal of the 60% limit on adjusted gross income that may be deducted through the charitable gifts of cash. So the whole point, though, here is there's an opportunity for us as citizens of the United States to reach out to your representative, and I'm going to work with Lynette, our executive director, to tell people here's what you need to do. But it's a call for us through what we're allowed to do under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, to express our grievances to our representatives. But you need to voice your concern and let them know they need to do this. They need to support passing phase 4 of economic relief and ensure it includes all these things to help us out. Because, you know, they've been focused on the bigger things, the airlines,
Sure.
Well, you know, the automotive companies, you know, the people that have really been suffering. But hey, we've all been suffering too. Now, granted, the Small Business Administration came out with the payroll protection program and stuff related to loans, and they extended that to include nonprofits, because primarily Small Business Administration is for profit, but they extended that to include nonprofits. And I know a lot of folks in the railroad industry, tourist railroads, have applied for protection under the PPP. And so if you haven't, I encourage you to. Also, I know TVRM, my own organization, we've applied for a loan from the Small Business Administration to help us, and we're nonprofit. So,
well, one thing to address though is it sounds like, you know, being a member of HeritageRail Alliance also in a way has us networked to other advocacy groups that are helping on our behalf that we may not even know about until, you know, the results come out or whatever. But
yeah, and I would encourage everyone to look at our COVID-19 page, because this is where we're capturing all this stuff. All our communications related to COVID-19, whether it's survey results that H2R has done for PGAV, we're getting those put up there, because that's great information to help you understand. Here's the concerns that the public has before they're going to start traveling again or start visiting museums. So I guess maybe I got too deep into the weeds, but we're trying to provide the communication from all these different groups that are doing things for museums that can help us. And we also want to share what we're doing to help each other. We're kind of like the network of keeping everyone in touch with each other, because, you know, there's not really a good mechanism out there other than maybe through us to know what the North Shore's doing, or what the California State Railroad Museum's doing, what the Strasburg Railroad's doing. You know, what's everyone doing to help survive this? And so our website is full of all kinds of stuff that people have sent us. Hey, here's what we're doing to keep our doors open virtually.
Sure.
or here's what we're doing to a letter we sent out asking for donations, or we're doing a crowdfunding exercise.
Well, and now more than ever, that kind of communication is super important. And so that is at the HeritageRail website, definitely worth checking out for everybody. And of course, it's also what we're a little bit doing here on these weekly
yes.
get-togethers, bringing all the railroads together to discuss
We're
where
probably going to wish we had more than just an hour when we're done.
well, I think we will, and that's okay. We can always have part 2. Well, Mark, tell me a little bit more about so some of the data that is there, though, maybe either posted or not posted, that you've seen in terms of surveys and data and information about tourists and heritage rail riders, our customers, the guests that are coming that support our operations. Looking into the crystal ball a little bit, what are you thinking the summer and season ahead is going to be like from a nationwide perspective of all the different railroads?
The data is telling us that long distance travel is going to be the last to recover. That you're going to see most people wanting to go places close to home because the risk of traveling where there's larger groups and you don't know where the people are from is scaring a lot of people. So, and the fact that everyone's been locked down for 2 months, we're all dying to get outside and go places, especially with summer coming, Memorial Day just around the corner. But you're going to see them going close to home. So there's an opportunity here to target your local audiences more than your bigger audiences. So focus your marketing on the home crowd, radio spots, TV spots, get them to come out. Now, with that, obviously, are the assurances that they're going to be safe. And obviously, we all understand as states reopen that protocols are being put out there by health departments or by state health groups, whatever. So to that end, we've had a task force within Heritage Rail actually put together some protocols, and I expect those will be put up on our website tomorrow afternoon.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me a little bit more about that task force.
Cheryl Marcel at the California State Rail Museum Foundation was the lead on that, and she had Stathy Pappas from Cumbrace and Toltec, Scott Becker from the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, Aaron Isaacs from the Minnesota Transportation Museum, and I feel like there was one more person that I'm omitting that got together. They did a lot of research. They got with other groups, and it's 3 pages worth of recommendations, and it's whether you're a museum or a tourist railroad, there's something there for you. And they're just some recommended guidelines, kind of like our recommended practices, just a supplement to it.
Sure.
And so people could take that and kind of look at what their local health departments are requiring. There may be some more things in here that can help. And in any case, you still need to get your health department to come out and bless off on what you're doing. Get an inspection and make certain that you've got a seal of approval, because you can build that into your marketing and say, hey, look, we've been inspected, you're going to be safe because we're going to do this, this, and this to protect you. Put, signage and make it part of your marketing.
I think that's really exciting, because I think something about heritage railroad operations, excursion railroads, we tend to think we're in our own little bubble. This is the only train museum in the world. This is the only little train ride, and we have to solve all of it, and we have to make our own policies. But in reality, and then the one thing we're doing again here is that we're bringing everybody together who does nearly the same exact thing. And we all have some of the same concerns right now with COVID-19. And how nice is it that somebody already invented the wheel for us, or at least started the conversation, and you had this panel that, your task force, you said, that is starting to put together some of the guidelines that we can follow, because otherwise we're really making it up based off of news and things like that we're watching.
And I think that's one area to where we can be very effective is, this is just, I think this is the 5th task force that I've actually created this year. Before this ever happened, I had 4 others working on different issues. And I like to do this when there's a specific issue that affects all of us, that we put some really good people on it and let them come up with recommendations that we can all follow. Because you're right. I mean, we're all in this together, and we all have the same problems. They're not specific to the West Coast, the East Coast, the South, the North. Not at all. I mean, and frankly, it isn't just us. It's worldwide.
Sure.
When I went to the Watt Train event in Frisco back in 2018, I learned that the folks in Brazil and the folks in Italy have the same problems we do. And that's what's fun about this is if we solve these problems as one, then we can all take care of it. And here's the other thing, you know, when we have an event, an accident, it doesn't just affect that group, it affects all of us. And so that's why, you know, we have to practice the utmost safety practices, you know, to the highest extent. We got to keep our people on top of things, because if someone, you know, if we have another Gettysburg accident, like, you know, it's 1995, it's been 25 years ago when that event happened, that, you know, that affected all of us. We cannot have another Gettysburg. And
that's a very good point. And we could be on the cusp of something along those lines, which we are helping to solve now. So these guidelines in the task force is coming out. We didn't quite catch that.
Yes, we have a board meeting schedule, a virtual board meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow morning. It's on the agenda. I expect the board to stamp their approval onto it, and then I'll have it on our website tomorrow afternoon. And I know there's a lot of folks on here that are not members of the Alliance. This is not behind a firewall. This is out there for everyone, because we're concerned about the industry here, not just members of Heritage Rail. So it's out there in front of the firewall so everyone can get to this information.
That's excellent. Well, thank you definitely for sharing that. We have 60 different railroads here represented, which is pretty exciting today. A reminder to everybody that we have that question box there. You can leave questions and comments, and we can try to address those here throughout today's conversation. We have about a half hour left, and coming up on the top of the hour here, we're here with Mark Ray, who is the president of the HeritageRail Alliance, and we're continuing our conversation here about how HeritageRail Alliance, which represents tourist railroads and railroad museums, works into all of this. So, Mark, transitioning the conversation a little bit from Heritage Rail into just railroad events and operations and our excursion railroads and things. Last week we talked a little bit about the Day Out with Thomas and Polar Express as representatives of sorts of large events that we have. So Pumpkin Train even worked into that. So beyond our daily, you know, 2-car train ride that we run, our big events where we have hundreds of people or thousands of people come to our properties all at once. We discussed a little bit about what the future of those kinds of things are like. From the 50,000-foot perspective of Heritage Rail, as looking at this as in general of all the different operations, tell me what you can think about how large events works into Heritage Railroads in the coming summer, if not the distant future.
I had a conversation yesterday with the folks from Mattel. We were on the phone for almost an hour, kind of talking about the future of the Day Out with Thomas event.
And Mattel represents the the Day Out with Thomas event.
Yes, yes. And I was very happy to learn, you know, they've got to where Thomas starts in February and goes all the way to November. And of course, that's what I would be doing this weekend, because this is the time of year we normally do our Day Out with Thomas event at TVRM. But all the events up until June, end of June, have been postponed, but they're trying to reschedule those as many as possible. But because of COVID-19, the look of the event's going to change dramatically. For instance, because of spacing limitations, so we can do social distancing, the capacity in the cars are going to be different. But this kind of gets into something else, but we're going to have to look at, that's going to have an impact on sales. And so we all know that we got to give so much of this money to Mattel, and what's the break-even point? You know, is it, if my profit is going to dwindle down to almost nil, is it worth even having the event?
Right.
And so we're all going to have to not think about this. All good, we get to have a Thomas event, but really, is it financially viable to perform the event? How many seats do I have to sell to make this worth doing? So, you know, those of us that do an event, you know, you got to look at this very, very closely with the financial piece of it and see if it's going to be worthy of doing. And if it's not, then maybe there's some other things you could do to take the place of that. I know everyone, all of us have gotten to where these special events are a big part of our budgets every year. And how can we replace that income?
Can you tell us a little insight as to what Mattel is discussing? They must be doing something on their side, looking at the future of the Day Out with Thomas event.
Yeah, and they wouldn't get into individual contract specifics with me, but I believe everybody should negotiate those rates, those fees that they bill us for. That, if I'm only going to be able to sell half my tickets, then, you need to reduce the amount you take of that. And let's talk about what the royalties are and what can we do as far as merchandise sales to kind of pump that up. I would put that on the table if I was going to be negotiating my contract with Mattel. Just don't think that it's not negotiable. I would put it all out there and
Sure.
say, you wanted 20% for this. No, you're gonna have to cut it to 10 because we've all got to make some money off this if we're going to do it.
Well, there's also the sliding scale kind of a big event you can take a bigger chunk of, and a smaller event you can take a smaller chunk of, and that is definitely something that railroads should be looking into. Those of us that do large events with a royalty company, I guess, that that we work with, because in the end of the day we are partners, right? We partner in Duluth with Mattel to do a Day Out with Thomas event. We partner, some of us, to do an event with rail events and so on. So a partnership goes both ways, and I think those discussions are important.
Yeah, I have not had any conversation with the folks from Rail Events. I'd like to have those conversations and see what their plans are. Obviously, they're a Christmas time event, and maybe I know they've laid off put a lot of their staff on furlough because right now they, can't do any planning.
Sure.
But, this is a time of year when we're, always thinking about what Polar is going to look like for this year, whether it's Polar or your own event like you do there at your museum.
Sure, the Christmas City Express, yes. Well, let me pivot that a little bit here, Mark, to talk about when is it appropriate to be pushing sales for these sorts of things. Just from your opinion, some of us are doing we're selling tickets right now and offering refunds or rescheduling. Some say that it's totally inappropriate to even be selling at all. You should be flipping the switch off and waiting to do your marketing until you're up and running and that's two extreme opposites. Where do you fit into when it's appropriate to be asking for money and donations and also selling tickets again to ramp up your summer?
That is a very good question. And my crystal ball is probably not any clearer than anyone else's when it comes to this. As you started this whole thing out with, we're in uncharted territory right now. But I think if we can assume that there'll be no winter resurgence of this, and going back to the H2R survey, the big thing people are waiting on is a vaccine for this. We get a vaccine for it, then everyone's going to want to have a normal life again. But the Christmas trains, I feel like that's fairly safe to go ahead and start promoting that. Day Out with Thomas is kind of still dicey because unless you've scheduled it late in the year, if you've got things scheduled for June, I would be a bit leery just thinking about what the data is showing us on when people are going to want to start traveling. I would be concerned locally about my Thomas event because we get so many people out of Atlanta. And Atlanta has been a very hot spot for COVID-19. And so I would be leery about bringing those people here to Hamilton County just for the fear of another breakout. So there's a lot of factors you're going to have to think about here. Now, if we were looking at maybe September for a Day Out with Thomas event, then, maybe 3 months prior, you could start selling tickets. But, if you got something in June, I would question about, is that the right time to be doing a large event? Because you need to be selling tickets for that now, and how many are really going to buy them? Because, people are still leery about what things are going to look like. So, you can offer tickets for sale, but on the flip side, who's going to buy them?
Well, that part is true. Maybe could we talk a little bit about some things that we could be doing to reassure people that it is
Yes,
safe?
that's what we got to focus on. And that kind of gets back into your practices that you're going to put into play. And that's something that Mattel talked about yesterday that they've been working on, is their own set of protocols for the Thomas event, what that's going to look like. And so when you start looking at, is it going to be good for me to do a Thomas event, you've got to look at those new protocols. And they said they're going to help supply the cleaning agents, the hand cleaners, and the other things, masks and whatnot, that we're going to need in order to do these events. And so I thought that was really good. In fact, that kind of segued into a conversation about our own selves. Do we have a source or suppliers for masks? And, you know, is there a way there maybe we could pool together, find a supplier and provide a source, a resource for those kind of things for everybody? And I thought, well, you know, that's a really good thing to go pursue. And so I'm going to bring that up on the board meeting tomorrow and see if we can get some folks that, hey, if you identified a source, can we share that with everybody? Maybe we can do some volume buying, combine some orders.
Or perhaps some themed items. We've looked into customized masks, for example.
There you go. Yeah, I've been
that
wearing it out with Thomas bandana when I've been going out.
Sure, of course, who wouldn't want that? But at the same time, I mean, those things have their costs if they're specific to your railroad. We can also get train themed or railroad themed, you know, masks or PPE that in general, that I think would be kind of exciting opportunity anyway to show that not only are we providing the safety equipment, but we're also having a little fun with it. And,
yeah. If there's one thing about the American spirit, it's our ability to adapt and take advantage of really bad situations and turn into something good. So, you know, anything we can do to make everyone feel safe when they visit our properties, whether it's some fun signage, you know, whether it's masks like that look like Percy or Thomas, or maybe your own locomotives or something, or maybe it's just a smiley face, you know, just something to make the kids feel comfortable when they come visit.
Absolutely, and that reassuring guests all the time. I wanted to share a quick thought that we had the other day, because we just recently got a little grant to help with the museum, was all of the buttons that we have in the museum. Back here, there's video screens where you push a button to get that video to play. We have to reassess that, and motion activated buttons are something that is not only something that is important to switch out, but it's also a marketable item that you can really push that look at what we're doing. And those kinds of things are super important to constantly be, you know, reassuring guests that you are focused on what is needed to be focused on. So Mark, let's transition to a little bit to marketing and keeping that message going to guests. Any thoughts you have just from a general perspective of how HeritageRail Alliance works into marketing in general? So let's start there, and providing that information at the conferences. I've been to several of them, and I've been to several seminars in those conferences where there was some really great information. Obviously, we can't have conferences this year for HeritageRail Alliance, but what kind of information could you give us about marketing in general and social media work that our railroad could be doing during this time of the shutdown? Some of us are also working, I might add, on a shoestring budget, right? So we're it's not as simple as, you know, let's say Pepsi company or something like that, where, well, whatever, we'll do $1 million ad campaign to promote brand awareness.
Yeah, you know, I need to remind all of our members, if you're listening, that one of the features of our new website that was designed by Kelly Lynch up at the Fort Wayne Historical Society and Lynchpin Marketing, plug for Kelly there, is the ability of our members to have a profile. And this profile is like your own little web page, and you can tell all about yourselves and what you do, where you are, and have a link there to your own home page. So it's like our whole goal here was to be a resource that if people are traveling to a certain region of the country and they want to visit a rail preservation site, whether it's a tourist railway, rail museum, or street railway, that they could go to our website and do a search and it, pull up whoever's there. And then that website or that page, profile page, would give all the information they'd need to say, yeah, we want to go do this, and click on their link to take them there. So, that's nothing. That's, that's part of your membership. So at least, there's a, way Kelly set this up is there's a little form you fill out and it auto populates everything, and you can load pictures and videos and YouTube
really
videos,
cool.
anything you want. Yeah. So Josh, I don't even know if you've got one up there yet.
I don't think I do. And I have a project for this afternoon, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's part of your membership fee is to have that profile there. And so, that would cost you nothing to do there. Thinking about other marketing opportunities, things that we have seen from other members. Once again, we're putting those on our COVID-19 page. There have been some really creative ideas that people have come up with. And so I recommend that it's kind of like a blog. So they're not really organized. They're kind of like as Lynette adds them, it shows up on top. So you might have to scroll down to find something. So it isn't like you can search for something, but just scroll down through it and it's just all one long page there for some really unique ideas of, like I said, going back to the resourcefulness of everyone, that it's amazing what we can come up with when we need to.
Absolutely.
I would like to go back to the conferences just for a second. That it's kind of something that it's what Train and Arm were always known for, was the annual meeting and conferences where everyone would come and a chance to network with everyone and share their issues and learn from others. We have vendors come there that support the industry, and they help support these conferences through sponsorships. Mattel and Rail Events are two of our big ones. All the insurers contribute, and it's a great opportunity for them as well. And I want to, it's not like an NRHS event where you come ride trains. Yeah, we do some things, we visit some venues, but our primary focus is education. There's something we need to talk about, what we can all learn from and share our learnings and discuss issues, what problems we're facing, so we can, you can solve them better together than individually. And so when you bring all this talent together into one room, I like to do a session every conference that we call Industry Issues and Challenges. And Tim Lesniak up in Connecticut, he's really great because he always comes with stuff and asks some great questions, and we get great feedback from everybody. And whether it's board issues or just trying to find some part, I mean, it's led to some great discussions. So we carry that throughout our strategic, our educational sessions, and we all wrap it up with a big banquet at the end and give out awards. We've been doing industry awards since the beginning. And we got to honor Doyle McCormick in Santa Fe in 2018, and that was really special to see Doyle come down there and meet with Al Phillips and some of the other folks from the old 44-49 crew. That was a fun moment.
Good. I'm glad you got to Timothy Lesniak too, because he had a question on here from the Connecticut Railroad Trolley Museum about balancing your policy changes basically and your planning for the summer with a moving target right now, because I think all of us thought, well, it was, I think originally May 1st everything was going to be over or something like that, and now it's May 15th, May 30th, June, and keep pushing out, and so you don't spend a lot of time wasted on these things. So he had a question about that. Anything you want to add to?
Well, that's one of the problems with this COVID-19. I've been tracking this. I can show you spreadsheets where I've been tracking this since it all started about, what the curves look like in terms of number of new cases. And here in Tennessee, it's completely different, say New York City. and maybe Washington State, and even Hamilton County here where I live. I thought we were about done with this because the number of new cases was getting down to where it was just 0 or 1 per day. But then yesterday we had 21 new cases. So
Right.
what's that all about? And so unfortunately, there is no good crystal ball right now. I hate bringing that analogy up again, and I feel Tim's pain. I mean, TVRM is scheduled reopening for May 23rd, and that's questionable now, because we're like everyone else thought this was going to go away, but everyone was warning us. I say everyone, a lot of people were saying, hey, you start reopening these states, you could see a resurgence, and I hope that's not happening. I'm just hoping that there was just they went and, I know the jails, the correctional facilities, let me be politically correct, the correctional facilities have been hot spots. So they've been getting 100% testing. And there's one here, a county north of here, that had a very large population of positive cases there. And that kind of drove the numbers up, but it was isolated and you can control that. So the big thing here is information and understanding your local trends. And if you focus on your local market, like we were talking about earlier, that maybe there is a good target to where you can reopen based upon what you're seeing at your local trends. And the health departments, if you've got a county health department that's collecting this data, they're a great source of information. The one here in Hamilton County, I follow it every day to see what they're saying, because they know where these cases are and they can tell you why they saw an uptick there. And that gives you some confidence that, yeah, okay, because it was restricted to that, like a healthcare facility, assisted living facility where they saw those cases, that, okay, they've got that quarantine now, so I'm not gonna have to worry about that spreading, I'm still good to open. So you just have to understand what the local events are in your area. But I wouldn't, and this is what, going back to Thomas events and the polar events, if you get audiences from several hundred miles away, that's going to change the whole dynamic. I think about Grand Canyon, they do 100,000 people for Polar Express every year, but those people come from hundreds of miles away. Right. And what's that going to look like for them when they're ready to start selling Polar Express tickets? Knowing them, they've probably already sold 80,000 already because they sell so far in advance. And there is no one answer, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, I want to quick get to a question from Tex Varney from the Wilmington Western Railroad. His thought is about, is any thoughts you might have about maintenance of way or restoration projects at this time, which are usually staffed by volunteers. And some ways you can look at whether or not you want to be even allowing volunteers to be working. Some of them, as we know, are hard to keep at home anyway.
And I've got a good answer for that,
especially
because I've seen evidence of it. You look at the social distancing aspect, wearing masks, PPE, that I have seen projects still underway. The 2029, the 557 up in Alaska. If you follow RYPN, they do essentially a monthly update. They shut down for a while, but then once some guidelines, protocols came out to wear a mask, do social distancing, they've allowed volunteers to come back on site now. At my own institution, TVRM, that's what we've done. We've got everyone exercising all the right protocols, taking forehead temperatures, ensuring that everyone is not getting ill. If you get ill, go home, isolate yourself, get a test. And so, you can act. Granted, working in a mask, a lot of times if you're grinding, creating dust, you're wearing a mask anyway.
Right.
So I think in terms of hardships, there's probably not anymore, but just ensuring that, when it comes lunchtime, that you're not all huddled together in the same room next to each other, practice social distancing during your breaks and lunchtime. And even for a while restaurants were shut down or doing takeout only, you had to think about, what am I going to do for lunch?
Right.
So I think it's perfectly okay now, for as long as you're following all the right protocols to keep projects going.
Sure.
Some of those that may depend upon the fare box for funding, you might have to think about, do I have the budget to support any cash needed for that project?
Sure.
But if you've got some that are funded from external sources through maybe a grant or something, by all means.
It is important, though, I think, for managers like the people here in our webinar and volunteers alike to be reinforcing those guidelines all the time.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because it really just takes one little touch here and there that really screws up the whole thing. It takes one person going into the room where you're not supposed to go, or the crew room, or wherever that may be, that was designated as a don't go, and you think, oh, well, that's just Jerry, whatever. But just the one, where was Jerry before that? It's not that it's him, it's who he was with before that, and so on. So it's important.
That's right. Yeah, and maintenance away activities, you're not running trains right now. So this is a great time to get caught up on all your track work. But as long as you practice the right protocols, and this kind of get aggravated with the track inspection rules and inspecting track when trains aren't running. But that's we could save that for another webinar with all the MRA stuff we got going on.
We only have about 5 more minutes in our conversation for this, and I know this is going to be a bigger picture question. However, but I wanted to get to some rules and regulations, which I might add is one of my favorite songs on the Day Out with Thomas tracks that they play. There's a song about rules and regulations. It's fantastic. Go listen to it. It'll get stuck in your head and play over and over again. Anyway, so FRA. The FRA is certainly got a challenge right now, as many of our railroads, including freight railroads, are having to recertify people and do their training sessions. They're giving some leeways that weren't there before. Certainly they have to in order to make things function. Maybe from another 50,000 foot perspective, as HeritageRail Alliance works into it, what are your thoughts on rule changes going forward in the FRA in general as it works into our operations?
I'm love the relationship we have with the Federal Railroad Administration, the folks up in Washington. Mike Ramsey is a great contact and resource for us. Steve Zotterveen, Gary Fairbanks, and those guys. Mike always comes to our conferences and loves to sit down and talk one-on-one with people and give them feedback. He participates in the seminar with us to answer questions, and usually there's a rule topic that we'll bring up and discuss. And RSAC, the Railroad Safety Advisory Committee, had a little break there because with the last administration change, they were slow getting the RSAC reconstituted. So a lot of rulemaking that we had queued up, or some rule changes that were queued up ready to go into rulemaking, kind of just stopped. And we're working now. We actually got re-invited to be part of RSAC. Unfortunately, RPCA did not. So it's just us now. We're the only representative of the Heritage Rail or Railway Preservation on RSAC now. You've got, these are people, the Union Pacific, all the big class ones, all the big labor unions are part of RSAC. And what's cool about it is we have a veto. I mean, it has to be, the way RSAC works is, in order for something to move into rulemaking, you have to have 100% consensus. So if there's something in there that we don't like, we can vote no and stop it in its tracks. Huh. And yeah, it's a great opportunity for us to ensure that any new regulation is favorable to us. And Eric Armpriester of the Strasburg is our representative on RSAC. Oh. And they've met a couple of times, but right now everything's on hold due to COVID-19. But there are some there's actually rollbacks that we want to do in garden track inspections. The training rule is probably going to be the most painful one. But, like I said a moment ago, this is probably going to be the subject of another webinar we could do later on, is how we're going to approach or what's going on in the regulatory world. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to discuss here. Well, and I could probably get Eric and maybe even David Wilkins to participate in that. David's our general counsel, and he's involved with a lot of this as well. He took Bob Opal's place when Bob retired.
And that's as the continued rules and policies come out, and that's still in the works. Is that correct?
I missed the first part of that, Josh.
Sure. As these new rules and regulations come out, and are implemented, they're still kind of in the works, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so what happens is, Congress will pass some piece of legislation and say you're going to have to do this. So it goes to the FRA to create the regulation to enact that piece of legislation. And so it goes through the Railroad Safety Advisory Committee, and they review it, comment on it, vote it up or down. If it passes out of RSAC, then it goes into rulemaking, which you get the notice of public rulemaking, and that gives the public an opportunity to comment on it, and then goes to final vote within FRA. And it's that RSAC is our chance to intervene. And so, but there's a lot of rules on the books already. And there was a lot came out after the Chatsworth incident that unfortunately we weren't a good part of RSAC at that time. I say us, it was Train back in 2009. And so a lot of stuff got through that we're really suffering pain for on now. Hours of service, track inspections, the 50-year freight car rule, reflectorization, safety glass or glazing. There's a whole list of things, and we've got them all queued up. Here's what we want to roll back. And it's just a process now we have to go through.
Gotcha. Well, that's definitely some good information out there. Just about a minute left here, Mark. Closing comments, thoughts on the future of Heritage Railroad operations as they relate to the HeritageRail Alliance here, the group.
COVID-19 is going to change things, but I think it's all going to be for the better in terms of how we approach our treatment of the public and keeping our sanitation, our hygiene, I guess is probably the better word. And it isn't going to be to us, it's going to be the world. How we're treated in restaurants and how things are clean. So, there's going to be a change there. But I think the biggest part that we're going to learn from this is improving our way to communicate. I would like to see these webinars become a regular thing. And we talked about this about we need to have this either once all this goes away and life goes back to normal is, maybe monthly or quarterly, because there's always issues coming up between Heritage Rail's spring symposium and fall conference that having a group discussion around probably would be a good thing. And so I think our ability to bring up issues and communicate them to everyone, and maybe a stronger use of the website, I think is all good. And so that's kind of some of the changes I see is how close we're going to be. I think we're getting closer as an industry, and I hope this continues to keep us bound together going forward.
I would agree with you. I think the networking and the communication is a really great thing that's going to come out of this, and hopefully that will continue. We had over 60 different guests here on our webinar today, so that of a couple hundred railroad excursion operations, that's 25% of the mix there, and they're coming together on this weekly basis. Mark, Ray, huge thanks for your time today and all of the information that you had for us. Really appreciate you joining us here on our weekly webinars powered by Dynamic Ticket Solutions. I really thank everybody for watching. I do encourage you to go back and watch some of the previous episodes that we did. Some great conversations happening here on our weekly webinar series during the COVID-19 shutdown. I'm Josh from Duluth, Minnesota, and I'm going to turn it back over here to Mike to wrap things up for the day.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Josh. We hope that you found this helpful and would encourage your feedback. Our next webinar will be next Thursday at the same time. Besides continuing the conversation today, we explore onboard food service with panelists Travis Stevenson from the Boone and Scenic Valley and Isla and Alan Camp from the Branson Scenic Railway. We will be getting an invitation email blast out before the end of the week, so watch your email. Please feel free to share the invitation with people that you think might also benefit from our conversation. Let's all try to stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.